I intend to fight for a state that has the largest number of immigrants, documented and undocumented, of any state in this country, and do everything we can to bring them justice and dignity and fairness under the law and pass comprehensive immigration reform. Bring them out from under the shadows.
Yeah, Kamala wants them to be citizens, to bring them justice and out from under the shadows. That's what she said. It's not like they're buying votes or anything. It's not like they're paying for their college loans, although they want to offer them free education, free housing, free health care, free food, well, free everything. That's what they want. When somebody tells you who they are, believe them. They're telling us who they are. We better believe them. It is the Chris Plant Show. Welcome to it. Mike Opelka sitting in for my buddy Chris Plant, who's on vacation. Thanks for being here. You are welcome to join the conversation. 888-630-9625 is the number. We've got a bunch of things we're keeping our eyes on. There is a Senate hearing with the current acting director of the Secret Service, who will be grilled like a cheese sandwich, I imagine. And we'll keep our eyes on it. If anything big breaks, I suspect the acting director, Ronald Rowe Jr., will get some pretty stern questions from the Republicans while getting a lot of grandstanding about gun control from the left. But you never know. When we had the initial hearing in the House with the former director of the Secret Service, Cheadle, both sides kind of came together and really went after the Secret Service director about the failings. There were a couple Democrats who stepped up and tried to make it about guns and gun control. But I don't know if that's going to happen in the Senate. We'll see. We will see. I don't know if we're going to get any real breaking news on this, but we will keep an eye on it. Also, last night they started having those big white dudes for Harris meetings. That's right, white dudes for Kamala Harris. They had this national campaign. They were telling us, there's going to be 60,000 white dudes for Kamala Harris. And, if you want to understand what that felt like, because I doubt there's very many people in this audience who actually would spend time in a white dudes for Kamala Harris Zoom meeting or phone call. But if you want to understand what it was like, here's the opening. Here's how the meeting started off in the white dudes for Kamala Harris. And by the way, if you tuned into it, you saw the donations coming in across the screen. They were scrolling across the screen like it was a telethon for some charity, which I guess we could say the Democrats are a charity, a very woke charity. But here's how it opened.
And that happens at the same time as the myths around America that we grew up with, that we as men are expected to be protectors and providers, are going out into an economy that doesn't really allow for that, especially for working class folks. And sort of like compounding on that, masculinity as a trope has been co-opted by the MAGA right into something that feeds into and exacerbates the loneliness epidemic, as well as the mental health crisis that many face that end up leading to really destructive behaviors. We aren't the only ones that are hurt by these things. Black and brown people, LGBTQIA plus people, especially trans women and indigenous people, and all sorts of other folks in our society who've been historically and often still today are marginalized and being hurt, demonized, and marginalized even further. So
in less than a minute, I think there was more woke language in that 56 seconds than I had heard previously in the last 7 days. Could there be any more buzzwords used for any other groups? Now, this gentleman is a white guy. He's got a man bun and a beard, a bit scraggly, but he's got a beard. And he was starting the meeting off by attacking masculinity. He also seems to be going after a group called incels. You're familiar with incels? I think Chris has talked about them. The involuntary celibate people. And there are some who suspect the guy who tried to assassinate Donald Trump, whose name I will not speak intentionally, but there's some speculating that he was an incel and that involuntarily celibate status is part of the reason why he wanted to kill the former and likely future president. I'm just saying that I really think that the Democrats ought to realize how ridiculous it is for them to tell us that we're racist while they're the ones who are segregating their phone calls for their candidate. Yeah, we have white dudes for Kamala Harris. We're going to have white women for Kamala Harris. I wonder if they're going to have black men for Kamala Harris. I wonder if there's going to be a specific LGBTQ call for Kamala Harris. Just throwing that out there. How many of these calls can you have? How many of these factions can you divide America into before America says, hey, stop dividing us? And the other side of this coin, which is not going away, is the fact that the Democrats are so focused now on labeling Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as weird. It's weird, weird, weird all the time. And we started talking about it yesterday because it popped up over the weekend. And it popped up with Governor Walz of Minnesota, a guy who turns out to be a pretty heavy-duty radical when it comes to his thinking. He is one of the more progressive governors, elected officials in the country. He's one of the more progressive minds, and he is currently in the list. He's currently in the running for the Veep stakes for Kamala Harris. I don't know how close he is to the top of the list. I still would not be surprised to see Mayor Pete on that list. Would not be surprised to see this Democrat Party try to go with the idea that we're not only electing a female of color to the presidency, but we want you to elect a man who's part of the LGBTQ community. I just think that's going to be one of the things that they're discussing. But back to Walz, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. He was on the white guy call last night. He was on the white guys for Kamala Harris, and he qualifies. He's a white dude, and he is, as a candidate for the Veep stakes, he's got to be for Kamala Harris, right? And he's the guy who is given the credit for initiating the statement of weird and creepy to describe Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. But here he is appearing to sign on with Kamala Harris's extreme progressivism. Remember, we played the clip Friday, I guess it was. Played the clip of Kamala Harris talking about how we need to have equity, how we need to have redistribution to make sure everybody gets to the same spot. Everybody gets to the finish line together. You see, this is why they started giving out trophies to everybody, because they don't want a meritocracy. They don't want people who want to win and lose, which is amazing to me that this is all this discussion is happening as we're competing in the Olympics, trying to be the greatest in the world. Maybe Democrats don't care. But here is Tim Walz on last night's White Dudes for Kamala Harris call, throwing his progressive bona fides out there.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
There it is. Who knew? One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Socialism is just being neighborly. Funny. I always viewed socialism as the gateway drug to communism. And we all know what communism has done. Communism killed, 100 million people in the 20th century. And I don't think we have an accurate tabulation on the first 24 years of the 21st century. But we'll work on that. We'll try and get that number out there. But yeah, that's Governor Walz. He's one of the people who's all in when it comes to Kamala Harris and what she's talking about. By the way, Kamala Harris didn't have time to go to the border, but she did find time to write a letter to Dylan Mulvaney. Remember Dylan Mulvaney? That's the man pretending to be a woman that cost Bud Light, about $24 billion in market share because some idiot in the marketing department decided to make Dylan Mulvaney a spokesperson for the beer. It was the number one selling beer in America. I'm sure it's making a bit of a rebound, but it cost Bud Light a significant amount of money. Kamala Harris didn't go to the border, has not said a single word about Laken Riley and her killing by someone in this country illegally. Not a word. But she wrote to Dylan Mulvaney and said, quote, I send you my warmest greetings as you celebrate your 365th day of living authentically. See, this is a note that Kamala wrote because Dylan Mulvaney, biological male, decided to market himself, themself, herself, whatever self they are, as a woman for a year, and which should be insulting to all women, should be insulting to Kamala Harris. How dare you appropriate the culture of a woman? If Dylan Mulvaney decided to say, hey, I'm a white dude, but I'm going to live 365 days as a black man, I guarantee you there would be outrage. But no, the left accepts this and celebrates this. Kamala went on to say, quote, thank you for courageously sharing your story and your journey. I appreciate your continued advocacy for transgender equality during your visit to the White House last year. You know, these people are crawling around the White House. At least they threw out Sam Brinton, the luggage-stealing, dress-stealing person who was a part of the Nuclear Regulatory Agency, a person who was connected to the disposal of nuclear waste. We still have Admiral Levine. This is the wokest, can I say wokest? The most woke administration in the history of our country. Kamala, who didn't visit the border but took time out to write to Dylan Mulvaney, said, I'm grateful for your dedication and courage. I hope you continue to use your platform to spread positivity and create change. I look forward to seeing all that you accomplish in the future. Yeah, got a lot of care and concern for the people of America, for the people who have been affected by the influx of 12, 20 million people who crossed our border, the tons and tons of fentanyl, the drugs that came across the border that killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Got a lot of concern for them. But, you got to write a letter to Dylan Mulvaney. That's who these people are. We need to never forget that's who these people are. Never forget. Last night, Donald Trump was on with Laura Ingraham. We're going to talk about that, and I want to share some of the moments with you from that event. It was a very interesting first part of the interview. And usually when you do a two-part interview, you save the really good stuff for the second part, right? And I think there were some really excellent clips from last night's interview with Donald Trump and Laura Ingraham. So I'm wondering, how much better can it get? If the really good stuff happened last night, I'm dying to see what happens tonight. And I'm going to give you some of the highlights and share some of the thoughts, because Donald Trump talks about Melania Trump's reaction to watching her husband being shot on television. Wouldn't that just scare the tar out of you? It would me. He talks about J.D. Vance. Donald Trump also explains when he said to the Christian audience that you'll never have to vote again, what he was talking about, and you'll understand why the media is wrong in their depiction of that. So much to get to today, and we're monitoring, of course, the Senate hearing with the acting director of Secret Service. We'll find out if we learn anything. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
You're listening to The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. It's Mike Opelka sitting in for Chris Plant as he's on vacation, returning next week. Thanks for being here. We're keeping an eye on the Senate committee hearing with the acting Secret Service director. And I can't help saying this out loud. If you were making a movie and you were casting the director of the Secret Service, I think this new acting director would be right out of Central Casting. He's got the high and tight haircut. He's got the jawline, and he's actually kind of openly said, "Hey, we screwed up. I can't defend what we did that day," which is good, and we just got to make sure it doesn't happen again. And we will see if there's any additional information. They also have a deputy director from the FBI, Paul Abate, answering some questions. And they're still calling this an act of domestic terrorism, but we don't know why this guy shot and tried to kill Donald Trump. We don't have a motive. Perhaps we will know more later when the FBI is finished with its investigation. But I presume the Secret Service is going to be doing a lot more in terms of protecting Donald Trump, especially when he goes back to Butler, Pennsylvania, to finish the speech he started. And they're also going to raise money for the families of the victims, including the survivors and the family of Corey Compatore. And as we heard earlier from one of the callers, the apparel that Compatore was wearing was from a company called Nine Line Apparel out of South Carolina, and they are doing a fundraiser, and every bit of money from it is going to the families who were hurt on that day. Nine Line Apparel. If you're so inclined, we'll get to more on that. I have to make sure I carve out some time for Donald Trump, the quotes from the interview with Laura Ingraham last night, but I want to take this phone call here. Dan is in Fairfax, Virginia. Dan, welcome to the Chris Plant Show. What's on your mind?
Well, I have two things. One, it seems like we're not addressing the issues in the ad campaigns. And one of the thoughts that came to mind was how effective it would be if you had a man-in-the-street type interview where you went up and found no Trumpers or real strong Democrats, and then said, okay, so you're not for closing the borders. You're not for reducing taxes. You're not for reducing crime. All the things that are on the Republican platform, you'd ask them, say, so you're not for any of these items, and see if you could get them to admit that they're not for any of those things. If they do say, hey, I'm for any of those things, you say, then why are you voting for a Democrat?
That's a good idea. Talk to some of the people at Kamala Harris rallies. There certainly are going to be a lot of opportunities. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
This is The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant. So much on our plate today. It is a veritable buffet of craziness out of the mouths of Democrats and a lot of very interesting and, frankly, very touching comments from Donald Trump last night as part one of Laura Ingraham's interview with the former president aired. I found it captivating. Although there were times I kind of wish Laura Ingraham would just let him keep talking. She had a tendency to jump in, cut him off a couple times. But he was very, very comfortable. And you could tell there's a friendship there. And Mr. Trump was laying to waste some very, very interesting claims from the left. And there was a discussion about whether or not Donald Trump was going to debate Kamala Harris because that's been going back and forth. In fact, last week he was asked about it. And said this right here.
If Kamala Harris does end up being the Democrats' nominee, will you commit to debating her at least one time?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'd want to. I think it's important. I would be willing to do more than one debate, actually.
So that was Peter Doocy. I think it was Peter Doocy asking Donald Trump, somebody from Fox. And he said, yeah, and I'd be willing to do more than one debate. And then somebody in the Trump campaign, it might have been Mr. Trump himself, said, hold on a second. She's not really the nominee yet, so we don't commit to anything. And I think that's fair. I think that's right. So it came up last night in the conversation with Laura Ingraham and Donald Trump. Will you debate? Will you debate Kamala Harris?
I like debating. I've done a lot of debates, and I've won the debates. I think they say I won the election because of that. I don't mind. They were pushing for this early debate. I said, why do we want to do an early debate? It didn't make sense to me. It turned out I was right, but for the wrong reasons, right? I want to do a debate, but I also can say this. Everybody knows who I am, and now people know who she is. She's a radical left lunatic. She'll destroy our country. She wants open borders.
And why not debate her?
Well, wait. But because they already know everything. She wants to defund our police. She wants no bail. She wants no cash. You kill somebody and we're going to release you immediately. They call it cashless. Cashless. By the way, this has been a horrible thing for our country.
Now, I'm stopping it there because what Trump is doing here is actually brilliant. He is debating Kamala Harris on her record without having her there to be able to defend herself. But this is her record. And he's saying, yeah, I'd like to defend her. I'd like to debate her so I could talk about these things that she's done. And she's advocated for cashless bail, which we know has turned how many criminals loose on the streets to wreak havoc on innocent Americans. So he's actually laying out what he would say in the debate stage, and she can't respond. Great idea. But wait, there's more.
Has been what I just said. But we know where she is. She wants high taxes.
Well, they're going to say you're afraid of debating her. That's what they're going to say.
Well, they said that with Biden, too. You know, I was afraid. I did great with Biden, and I did great in every debate. I've had a lot of debates.
But you're winning on all the issues,
But, you know, I'm leading in the polls by, I think, a lot. I don't know. I hear different numbers. But I'm leading in all of the polls. I'm leading big in all of the swing states. And I say this. The answer is yes, I'll probably end up debating. I think actually the debate should take place before the votes start being cast.
Now, there's an interesting point. Donald Trump saying he wants to debate Kamala Harris before votes start being cast. And there are votes that will be coming in September, which is still just astounding to me that we allow this, but we have to take back control before we can change the madness that's been injected into our elections. And anyone who watched the Pennsylvania Senate race between Dr. Oz and John Fetterman knows that Oz was so far behind by the time they got the one debate in, there was no chance for him to win. So I think it's wise for Donald Trump to say, yes, I will probably debate her, but I want it to happen before votes start coming in. Just really interesting. There's more on the debate thing, but I have to clarify because the great Corey Ingemort just made me notice it was Bill Malugin who asked Donald Trump last week about debating. Thank you, Corey, for checking in on that. Back to Donald Trump with Laura Ingraham last night on debates, and Mr. Trump gets into it here pretty good.
I had a very good second debate with Biden. I really beat him badly. The problem was 30-40% of the votes were already cast. If you're going to have a debate, you got to do it, I think, before the votes are cast. I think it's very important that you do that. So the answer is yes, but I can also make a case for not doing it. Also, I don't like rewarding fake news. I don't like rewarding the people that have been, if they're going to make tens of millions of dollars with this debate. I don't like ABC. I think it's a terrible, terrible outfit. I don't like that ABC is going to get rich, George Slopadopoulos, as I call him. I don't like these are such bad people. I don't like that ABC is going to get rich. I don't like, and I will say something that when CNN did the last one, they were very fair. Jake Tapper was very fair.
Now, that is the first time I think I remember Donald Trump calling Jake Tapper not fake Tapper. And I agree with him. I thought CNN was relatively fair as they could be, even though there were a couple of questionable moments. But this is Donald Trump who has said he would like to have a debate on Fox News. And maybe there's a bargaining chip here. But he's correct that ABC will make money off of this. And yesterday we talked about Stephanopoulos and the Rush Limbaugh nickname for Stephanopoulos, Step All Over Us. But I think I like this one better. I think we should latch on to this one.
I don't like that ABC is going to get rich. George Slopadopoulos, as I call him.
Yeah, Slopadopoulos. I think the Slopadopoulos is the new dinosaur of news over at ABC News. I think that is the dinosaur du jour at ABC News, Slopadopoulos. Do we have a Slopadopoulos out there? Yes. Yes, and maybe we'll get to see him. That's a good nickname. And Donald Trump is good with that. He's very good with the nicknames. He's very good with putting the nicknames on him. Donald Trump, in his interview with Laura Ingraham, talked about his wife's reaction to the shooting, to the attempted assassination. And I don't know if I've heard this story before. I thought this was pretty fascinating. Donald Trump with Laura Ingraham last night explaining Melania Trump's reaction.
She was watching.
Oh, she was watching in real time?
She was watching live. It was all over the place. It was on television. It was on your network, but it was all over the place. And she was watching. I asked her that. I mean, I wasn't there. I was on the ground. And when the world started to, like, you could talk to people, I said, so what was your feeling? And she was, she can't really even talk about it.
Traumatized.
Which is okay, because that means she likes me.
No, she
loves me.
That's good.
I mean, let's say she could talk about it freely. That wouldn't be, I'm not so sure which is better. But she either likes or loves me, and that's nice.
So Donald Trump having a very personal moment with Laura Ingraham and her audience on Fox News, talking about his wife's reaction as she was at home watching as an assassin tried to kill him. And it was only 5 or 6 minutes into the speech when this happened, and it truly was stunning. I was watching it live myself. And he talks about when the world finally allowed him to speak to her, which is true, because the minute this happened, the Secret Service threw themselves on top of him. And then the plan was, how do we get him out of here? How do we get the package off the stage? How do we get him into the SUV, into the hospital? Because in this case, he did have a wound to his ear. And it was some time before he could talk to her. And it was kind of cute for him to say that she couldn't talk about it, which meant she was very traumatized by it. It was an interesting moment. I had not heard him talk about that. I know that Donald Trump said at the convention that he really didn't want to have this discussion again. He didn't want to tell the story of the shooting, and yet it's going to be impossible not to tell the story, because this is a turning point in the campaign. This is a pivot point, if you will, in this presidential campaign. It certainly was probably the issue that cinched it for the Democrats to move Joe Biden out of his role and get him to step aside. If the debate didn't do it, the attempted assassination from Donald Trump did. No questions asked. Now, last night, this interview with Laura Ingraham and Donald Trump went a little deeper on some of the things about Kamala Harris. And Mr. Trump is very clear on how he feels about Kamala Harris. And I think he's very disciplined on this, too. You know, the left likes to say he's just ranting off the rails. No, he's really focused. I think he understands who his opponent is.
I think she's a worse candidate than him. She's far more radical left. She is younger. I mean, she's 60 years old. A lot of people, I didn't realize she was 60. I thought she was a little younger. But she's 60. She is talking a big game, but her game is pretty bad. I mean, she was the border czar. She's trying to pretend that she wasn't. You know, it's an amazing thing that's happened, too, because we talk about the fake news and the fake news media. It's very hard to find an article now that talks about border czar, but we have them all. We copied them.
Good. So we have the receipts, is what Donald Trump is saying. So if you dare say she wasn't the border czar, well, we have the tape of all the networks, all the mainstream media outlets, the print media, the online media, saying that Kamala Harris, in her role as border czar, is or isn't doing the job. And there's more than that. There are the things that the statements she has made. And Mr. Trump apparently ready for a debate. I think he's ready for a debate, and I do hope it happens before they start counting votes. We just have to make sure that she's the actual candidate before you commit to anything. Because let's face it, just in the last 6 weeks alone, the Democrats have gone through 2 presidential candidates. There may be another one coming. Who knows? We certainly can't be certain of anything with these people. More from Donald Trump's discussion with Laura Ingraham about Kamala Harris and the statements she has made.
In politics, when you start off saying something, that's where you are. And she was for defund the police. She was for open borders. She was for having anybody come in. Now I notice that they're actually saying they want to have immunity for everybody that came into the country. And they want to have citizenship.
And that's true. And we played that clip at the beginning of this hour that Kamala Harris has come out and said they want immunity. They want a path to citizenship. Well, we already have a path to citizenship for people who come here legally. That's already established. That is something that already exists. But at the very opening of that, Donald Trump's saying where you start speaking, what you say when you first start talking publicly in politics says a lot about you. It says a bunch about you. And Kamala Harris in her early statements are very important. She's been out there trying to scare people for quite some time, and she's been talking about things like climate anxiety. Yeah, climate anxiety.
I've heard young leaders talk with me about a term they've coined called climate anxiety. Right? Which is fear of the future and the unknown, of whether it makes sense for you to even think about having children, whether it makes...
Yeah, we can't have children because of the weather. That's what the Democrats want you to believe, that we're not going to be able to have kids because of the weather. And then we learned last week that the whole CO2 scam is just that. There is a peer-reviewed study that shows that there is absolutely no effect on the climate based on CO2. There was an effect up to a point, but we've maximized that. I've got so much more of this. I have Donald Trump talking with Laura Ingraham about the Olympics, and we have to get to that. That's a really interesting point. And we should do an Olympic update as well, because there's some breaking news already this morning out of the Olympics, and we'll check in with the hearing with the acting director of the Secret Service and see if there's any real news there. Currently, it's just, hey, no, we didn't do the right thing, and no, we don't understand why there was not better coverage on the roof. Well, maybe it's because the hire was a DEI hire and not a meritocracy hire, not based on who earned it, but who checked the boxes. We'll get to that. And you can join the conversation as well. 888-630-9625 is the number. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka sitting in for my friend, my childhood neighbor. Can you believe that? We lived in the same Wonder Years-like subdivision in a near north suburb of the city of Chicago just, a couple of years ago. Couple of decades ago. Okay, a handful of decades ago. But I'm happy to be here. Always enjoy being in with the Chris Plant audience, sharing the news du jour and the madness du jour, and there's plenty of it. I've been focused on the interview. It was a fascinating interview, I thought. Donald Trump with Laura Ingraham last night. 2 very important issues. The issue of voting and people of faith voting, which Donald Trump has been called out for by the mainstream media because he said, hey, we don't need Christians to vote after this election. And the left has leapt upon that. Oh, he's going to be a dictator. He'll never vote again. Well, Mr. Trump explained in his own words.
Et cetera, et cetera. So with respect to like a statement like I made, that statement is very simple. I said, vote for me. You're not going to have to do it ever again. It's true. Because we have to get the vote out. Christians are not known as a big voting group. They don't vote. And I'm explaining that to them. You never vote. This time, vote. I'll straighten out the country. You won't have to vote anymore. I won't need your vote. You can go back
so
to
you
not
meant you don't
voting.
have to vote for you because you have 4 years in office.
Look. Christians are known. You know who else doesn't vote? Gun owners don't vote.
But just to be clear, what you're saying, though, you're not saying it's being interpreted as you are not surprised to hear by the left as well. They're never going to have another election. He's saying there's not. So
First time I've even heard.
Can you even just respond to that?
I said Christians. I started off by saying, just so you understand, you never vote. Christians do not vote well. They vote in very small percentages. Why? I don't know. Maybe they're disappointed in things that are happening. But for a long time, I say, you don't vote. I'm saying, go out. You must vote. November 5th is going to be the most important election in the history of our country. Whether you vote early or not, we should have, by the way, one-day voting. We should have voter ID. We should have proof of citizenship. And we should have paper ballots, okay? That's what we should have. But we don't have that. But I said to the Christians in the room, thousands of them, I said, typically Christians do not vote. Why it is, I don't know. You're rebellious. Something's going on. Don't worry about the future. You have to vote on November 5th. After that, you don't have to worry about voting anymore. I don't care, because we're going to fix it. The country will be fixed, and we won't even need your vote anymore because, frankly, we will have such love. If you don't want to vote anymore, that's okay. And I think everybody understood it. I didn't know there was any.
Yeah, everybody understood it, except it could be weaponized by the mainstream media, which it was. They absolutely took Donald Trump's words and twisted it. Oh, he's a dictator. He's never going to allow elections again. No, that's not what he meant. But context was missing, just like the Fine People hoax. They don't give you the whole story. And if there is not proper context, it's easy to twist something. So with, as Chris likes to say, information dominance, you end up with what we've had for the past few days. Donald Trump says no one should have to vote after this election. He tells them, vote for me and you'll never have to vote again. Not what he was saying. And if you had listened to the minute or two before and the minute or two after, and you're honest, which we know the mainstream media is not, maybe you would have gotten that information across. I've run out of time again. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.